Right. So here we are in a workshop with the Peaceful Heart Network to together collaborate on finding the right questions and possibly some answers to meeting refugee trauma and what that is about and what that means. I'm Ulf Sandström. I'm one of the co-founders of the Peaceful Heart Network. And together with Gunilla, we have been working with, among other things, refugees for quite a number of years.
Yeah, and I'm Gunilla Hamne. So we're super happy that you have joined this this webinar so that we can assist people, because any of us one day we might have to leave our homes. I mean, nobody knows, for different reasons. You can be a refugee within your own country, as called internally displaced persons, like I would say after the wildfires in California. So it's not different, and or after landslides in other parts of the world, or in the question now that is, covering so much of the media, and people having to leave the country of Ukraine because of the war. And we all find ourselves, can find ourselves, since we are here, probably all of you have been thinking of or already doing humanitarian work, or having clients already that perhaps have other, a trauma, because we can all run into trauma. But we try to focus this on meeting people who had to leave their home and coming into this insecurity, because a non-safety, which is, since safety is the basics of psychological well-being. And when you have to leave everything, of course, you leave your whole ground of safety and come into a completely different situation in life that you probably, for most people, have never thought of, that you would leave your home.
Yep.
And
some things are quite specific when it comes to refugee trauma compared to other people, like Gunilla is saying. There's the lack of your normal social support. There might be a lack of anonymity when seeking treatment. There might be complications by working with translators that you don't know really exactly what the relations are to people in your home, village, or town. There's many layers of things that happen. And also there are some things that happen more often to refugees than other people in trauma. You could say that the statistics say that now we're up in 1% of the world population, around 84 million displaced. And out of them, an assumption is 20 to 80%, that's a wide gap, have some kind of mental challenge or even post-traumatic stress, however you would measure that.
And you, Ulf, is very fast in reading, so if you can, you take some of the comments in the chat.
I sure can. So from Kenya, we have Lauren, a specialist working with refugees and asylum seekers in East Africa. I won't be able to turn the video and sound on because you're in transit, but that's fine. We'll probably try to chat as you can, as long as your cellular connection lasts. Lucy is a licensed mental health counselor in Boston area and an advanced EFT practitioner, tapping EFT, for those of you who are new to this video, and ample experience working with all sorts of trauma, including combat trauma in different populations, in particular with US military veterans. We have Eileen, who is in the UK, in Devon, was told about this by an EFT tutor and is here to learn, and that's lovely. We love that. Work with trauma. We have Lucy, and want to volunteer with refugees in your area and internationally, but you don't have direct connections, so that's an excellent place to start and share experiences. Kristin Miller, our colleague from the ASAP Humanitarian Network, and who has worked in the same methods as we have for a long while, trauma psychologist in North California. So lead on the ASAP Emotional First Aid Committee, has been in the Lost of Fire outreach, and loves to understand how to interact with refugees and those that serve them. We have Richards, Vij, who's working as an RP in a hospital setting, supporting the staff through the pandemic with emotional support. And you volunteered to join Aga and Jess in Poland, who are working with the Polish refugees from the war in Ukraine. So that's excellent.
What is an RP?
Yes, what's an RP?
A registered psychotherapist.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for that. And then we have Angelita, is in the northwest of England, EFT practitioner, working your community with a not-for-profit, looking for help to help your local refugee community. Jimmy, in the UK, psychotherapist, works with clients who are LGBT in Muslim countries and communities. You also work with people who have left Islam, ex-Muslims, and the work tends to be trauma focused. Yeah, definitely. Wow, great work. Fantastic, a bunch of heroes. We humble and rejoice. Deidre did our TTT course and is about to start sharing this with women who were sexually abused as children. Eager to learn more, Paula, New Brunswick, Canada. Anticipating arrival of refugees. I'm skipping a little bit through this. Lorna in Sacramento, California, to help spread the work in many places as possible. And you are both EFT, TTT, and Havening certified. And then David, that we presented before. You're a psychologist in the US, and we'll let you tell a little bit. Maybe even we could start there. I don't know. What do you think, Gunilla? Because you've been writing about disaster relief and supporting disaster relief efforts recently in a wonderful paper just published.
Yeah, so we just, if you don't mind, David, just tell a little bit about that paper, because I think it definitely interests everybody, and we will answer all those questions that you have.
Well, thank you. In 2008, I wrote a paper that was focused on the same issue, and so much has happened since 2008. In 2008, thought field therapy was particularly going out there to do work with people that had suffered through catastrophic events, and now in 2022, there's more than 30 countries have had tapping techniques brought to them, and so including, you know, the two of you have touched more than 30 countries alone. So it was really a pleasure to email interview you in writing the paper. I think the main contribution of the paper is conceptual, to just look at the different tiers of intervention. That there's immediate relief and stabilization as the first tier. The second tier is really changing the conditioned response to the trauma, so that flashbacks and nightmares become unconnected from the amygdala and limbic system response. The third tier is dealing with more long-term psychological problems, and often these come up because of a disaster. Things that have just been buried and the person's living their life just fine, maybe limited, but they're living it fine. But suddenly these problems like attachment issues are just right in their face. And the fourth tier is really promoting post-traumatic growth and dealing with the spiritual issues and the existential issues that come up. And so the paper, I had the privilege of interviewing many of the people, including Kristin, who's on this call, who have been right there on the front lines. And so more than half the paper is simply reporting what these heroes told me. And then the paper also goes into looking at some of the counterintuitive traps that are involved when you're working with people that have been, you know, that have survived a disaster, such as we all know to tell people that their extreme emotional reaction is normal and it will pass and it will get better. But what about the people that it doesn't pass? What about the people who go into PTSD? Then you've kind of stigmatized them by telling them that the normal thing to do is to get over it. And so that might lead to them not admitting what they're going through or not seeking help. And then the final part of the paper looks at the ways that this work can be delivered very efficiently and effectively through large groups, borrowing benefits, through electronic media. ACEP has done a lot with you guys in terms of developing online resources, and also in creating ways of working with the local mental health community and really training them so that they can, so there'd be an ongoing support system. So that's basically the paper. And I think the question that I most want answered in this presentation is, with TTT and havening, the primary, at least initial interventions that you teach and that make so much sense to teach, of the 4 tiers, which are really addressed in TTT and havening, and which require other methods, perhaps a fuller EFT or TFT approach. So that's the question that I hope will be answered by the end of the talk.
Good. Yeah, thank you so much, David. And if any of you don't know David Feinstein, I would say, so how many papers have you written on energy psychology, David, since you started?
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah,
it's
so
a
David,
disease.
yeah, it's a disease. So David is the one who has written the most scientific articles about these kind of techniques. So if you don't know it, you look, and we will, after this, when we send out our email, we will also add David's latest article, this one on disaster relief. And together with Dr. Peter Stapleton at Bond University in Australia, the two of them are the ones to publish most, and so helpful for all of us working with these techniques to be able to refer to somebody who, to these fantastic articles. So look out for David Feinstein's article. So thank you so much, David, and thank you so much for the support. We will be coming back to one person who you also interviewed in your article, who is also our mentor. So I think you can put on the slides a bit. Thank you, David.
Yeah, so I'd just like to add to that, you know, what hits me when we talk about the 4 tiers, the immediate relief stabilization, of course, that's emotional first day. That's the first thing you can do. And it's never too early to do it. I mean, that's one question we often get. How early can you do it? Is it too early just after something happens? And the answer is absolutely not in our experience. And when it comes to reducing limbic arousal to trauma-based triggers, that's something where we find it useful with the app, where we give people the tools so they can do it for themselves when they get triggered, because we don't have control over the triggers and we don't have the time to speak to each one of them. But if they get the tools so they can apply it to themselves, then the tier number 2 can be met. When it comes to 3 and 4, I would say that, you know, there's a difference between a forced fire and running from war, and running from war during a week or doing it during 8 months, because 8 months is a complex kind of trauma that has all the layers of already developed stress. And a recent issue would probably be slightly different. But I would think that the more you go from 1 and 2 to 3 and 4, the more you would be looking into adding other interventions as well, because complex psychological difficulties could be easy because they're triggered by something, but they could also be complex that require some in-depth therapy actually to address. And that's something we're not that much involved in because our situation doesn't allow for that, but we do it, so we have experience of it. And promoting optimal function, post-traumatic growth, again, I would say, just as a quick response, so we don't leave any of those tiers before the end of this, I would say that promoting optimal functioning is, again, having people understand this and use it for themselves. So, because you never know what triggers it, but if you can apply this to yourself whenever you're triggered, you're actually checking stuff off the list without even knowing what it was.
Nice.
Nice. Good.
Okay. So
Thank
some
you.
slides. Is that what we're saying? Should
Yeah,
we start with the answer to everything? So we've done that.
Yeah, I mean, it is like we have this answer to all questions, and at each workshop we offer the person who has a question who cannot be answered with these words or this statement. We offer a dinner at any place where you are. We will come and serve it to you. So the answer to all questions is it depends. So it depends, because it's always like that, because you can ask, you know, like this, it's like a bit big of us saying that, oh, how do you work with refugee trauma? Of course, it has the same answer. It depends. It depends on where you are, who it is, what their experience, like Ulf said, if they have had what experience before they came to where you meet those persons. And we have been in a bit different locations, and and together with us now also this today, and I saw that Placide and Cubito, who is also like, I don't remember your name, Laurie, who also worked in East Africa. Placide is our For Peaceful Heart Network. Our trainer of trainers in starting from Rwanda, Eastern Congo, Uganda, Kenya, and he just came from Kenya. And I think your colleague is there also. Is Christian also there, Placide? Anyway, and then we also have, and you are here, Christian, so welcome. So Christian and Placide, they were just recently in the eastern part of Kenya, where Christian lives, working with South Sudanese refugees in Eldoret. And we can tell a bit about that story later on, and the reason they are there, and because they actually came from another part of Kenya where they were studying. And then we have Barsu, who is presently doing workshops together with his wife in Kabul in Afghanistan. And of course, they are, in a way, meeting all the time women who have been widowed. You correct me if I'm wrong, Barsu, who have, in a way, become internally displaced persons, and now are situated in Kabul. So these are, our part of our experiences. But I'd like to start with some slides. So that was Barsu, that is what.
So we start by talking a little bit about, well, as David mentioned, we have a number of different techniques, but our two main hero techniques is the trauma tapping and havening that we use a lot for this. And we use them because we find them effective. They're free of cost. We haven't found any harmful side effects. They're available everywhere because all you need is your hands. And there are enough studies to lean on for those.
Yeah. And so many, as we said, of these studies come from Dr. David Feinstein, who just spoke at the beginning, and Peter Stapleton, who is adding on, and actually we too. So, but a very small amount compared to David. So these are the reasons. So in a way, and we just want to make a short, recap of the way that we got into this work. And you could say that it started in a way with refugees, because when I did my studies of thought field therapy in 2007, we had this article we had in our material, and it was actually I learned later on, the first, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, first scientific article published in what is called a peer-reviewed journal, in the Journal of Clinical Psychology in the US. And this was 5 psychologists who had been working with tapping with a version called thought field therapy, the original one created by Dr. Roger Callahan in 1980s. And they had gone to Kosovo after the wars on the Balkan, and treating and teaching TFT with very good results. So good results that, if you take the next slide, yes. When I met Dr. Carl Johnson, who was the main writer of this article, he said that, we found out that people found it too good results to be true. So when you do this work, never really tell how well things worked out, because they will not believe you, because that was his experience. He felt very questioned when they published this article. So the reason we came to work on this, and the reason our organization is called Peaceful Heart Network, was because I contacted Dr. Carl Johnson after I had done my studies in TFT, and asked him if I could come with him. So we went to Rwanda in the beginning of 2007. So my training was in 2006. And some of his statements are still what we work from. And that is to assist those who are traumatized, and specifically those most vulnerable and those most forgotten. And refugees easily and quickly become forgotten. Like now, it is as if we have to focus, of course, on the Ukrainian refugees, but since we work in other parts of the world also, we know that there are, unfortunately, we said, so many others who also are refugees. So that was his statement. And also this focus on trauma, because so few people can help people who are traumatized, and they suffer so much. Like also David said, that some will just feel like, oh, I should have gotten over it years ago. because this is so long time ago, you know, I must be a bad person, or I'm a sinner, or I have some other fault that makes it I'm still sick. Yes, my dear David.
Just one small correction, but it's an important one, is that when the Journal of Clinical Psychology was getting this really strong pressure from, you know, Carl and I think particularly from the TFT community, they were not willing to publish these articles as peer-reviewed articles, because but what they did was that even though it's a peer-reviewed journal, is they made this giant exception. And it was really a major thing in psychology for a very traditional psychology journal to pay any attention to tapping. But with the way they did it was they said, okay, we're not going to do it as peer-reviewed, but we're going to have commentaries on each article. And so you'll see the commentaries totally rip each article apart, and in ways that don't really stand up. But the early reception was so bad within the psychological community that that's how they handled it. And so we can't say that these were peer reviewed. But
that's great that you tell the full story, because I never heard the full story from Carl, only that he was so criticized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, because this was in 2002, it was published, or 2001 even. So it's like 20 years ago at least.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So now I know the full, or we know the full story. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Yeah. So this is where it all started. So we started working in Rwanda and Burundi. This photo is from Burundi, where many people then were internally displaced after the genocide, both in Rwanda and the Congo. And we will, and Rwanda and Burundi. So this is where our journey started. It was also the name Peaceful Heart Network was Carl's. He wanted to create this peaceful heart collaboration of the world. So, and that is what we are following his. And without him, as I told David, this work would never have been done, because he was so helpful. Yes, we just go through, we're just going to show you some of this. So the first refugee camp where I went to, and I got some of the experience, was Zulu camp. It's in the Congo. Then I was kind of fresh. I had just been with Dr. Johnson in Rwanda, and then I was invited to come to the Congo. And then take just the next picture. So you see, this is how this camp looked like. You see the shacks behind, they just built from plastic sheets, just like a hut. And there were so many, especially mainly women here. And here was one of the first experiences of meeting refugees who had nothing. So they said, when we come, I came together with an organization. So I was not alone. We never go alone. That's also one of our basic, rules, is that we always have connection with somebody who is already somebody who is connected in the community, you know. So here in the middle is actually the lady in the yellow and white dress. It's right in the middle, who was the one to bring me and some colleagues there. And then these people, they said, so what is this we're going to do? We are hungry. Why don't you bring us food? Or, you know, it can be anything. Why don't you bring us food? That's what we need. And then we said, we don't have any food. But it's having also said that, but with these techniques, you can actually find inner peace and make your mind more clear, to make you be able to find your way, how you're going to manage your life in the future, or even the next day. Because that's the other part, you know, you can end up seeing that people have all different needs. But for us, it is that we can only do one mission. And we came to that point later on also, seeing that, yeah, I mean, of course, the basic needs are not fulfilled, but just with your clear mind, or a clearer mind, more sleep, more rest and recuperation, you will have more ability to cope with your life ahead. So this was Zulu. So this was in some 2009, perhaps, and that when we were there.
Yep.
And this is a Congolese refugee camp. Now it has already become houses. Did you go there, Placide? Did you go to the camp anytime? I was there only when it looked like this, I've been passing it many times since then, when they have already constructed the houses. One of our colleagues were there to do trainings and teaching TTT, and that's where we came to this conclusion, which is also important, which is the multiplication effect. If you tell about that, Ulf.
Yeah, multiplication effect is well, we can't. I mean, first of all, like Gunilla says, we had to focus on what we're good at, what we actually do. So we couldn't focus on helping people with food or medication or anything, because that would kind of thin out what we're doing. So we spear focused on bringing trauma relief through these techniques, and then how to bring it to a lot of people. Well, our colleague Marigo went there and she found 8 people and trained them and said, if I want you to go back now and practice and find 4 people each and bring them back. And then that way we could do a multiplication with people training people, training people, training people. So we created these orange bracelets that could be brought in a bag, several hundreds of them, and dealt out to people that said fingertips heal trauma and trauma tapping techniques, so that people would be seeing who had them and asking about them and raising curiosity. And I think we estimate that we probably reached a couple of thousand in that camp through the multiplication effect. And we've tried to do that ever since. So we see this as a peer-to-peer spreading technique. That's the main force of it.
Yeah, so it's always training of trainers. And that's why also our resources, we call it open source, that everything on our website is for free, because we want people really to commit to not keeping these techniques to themselves, but to share them with others. And that's why also we have simplified. I mean, our version of tapping is a very simple version. And that's why we call it first aid, so that anybody really can do it without having any difficulties in learning or thinking, oh, how should I do this or this? Just tap on these points and a lot of relief will be done. And I just got a message from one of those who unfortunately are still in that refugee camp, Bonane, who wrote, and sent me photos that they are still doing TTT workshops in that camp that now has become more like a village actually in Rwanda, because now they've been there for 7 or 8 years, I think. And then Placide, I'm trying to make you speak. Can yes. You? Yeah, yes. Good. Yeah, so Placide and myself, we went to this place. If you just tell about Koboko a bit.
This place is part of Uganda, up close to the border of South Sudan. So we were meeting the local leaders, the member of the church who also have responsibilities. So one of the Hilo, he attended also, his name is Pastor John, who is doing also tapping within a big community, refugees from South Sudan. So he came, he couldn't understand this, and then after one day of the training, he came to us and he was, I don't know what happened. When he went back home, the parents started his wife told him and the kids, what happened to Dad? You look different in your face. And he started telling the story. He said that I have released something that has been holding me. We call it the bucket or the sack on the back, that you run away as refugees, but you don't, you go with the wall in the country where you are in your mind. So when he was able to do this, he devoted himself also to share as much as possible. As he goes around to teach the word of God, also he brings together the tapping and he puts together. He has touched so many people. You can't imagine what he's doing. It's beyond the words that you can explain with.
Yeah, because where he lives, unfortunately, since the conflicts in South Sudan, in Koboko and around it, it's called the refugee camp of Bidibidi. It's the world's largest. It's like 1 million people living there in the north of Uganda. So, and we actually fundraised for him a motorbike so that he could go to the different parts of the refugee camp. And also, if you come there, it looks like villages. You wouldn't, you don't imagine a refugee camping looking like that often. Because people also have been there, started planting, and even if the soil is very, very, very poor, but still, and he keeps going, like Placide said, and Placide has been there a couple of times more. I have been there twice, and Pastor John, he is just, you cannot make him tired, and he never asked for anything actually. So we always have to say, but what you need now, you know, you have to support your family, you're going a lot and you're traveling a lot. But he is a true hero. And he's one of those people who we call our allies, you know, within a community. You saw the former picture, they were 70, I think, wasn't it, Placide, or something, of those community leaders. And some of them took on this, but John was the one to take on this because he felt this big change, like Placide said, inside himself. He had been angry. He's a pastor. He felt like, you know, I even get angry. I shouldn't be like that when I'm a pastor. And then he understood that he was carrying things from the past. And that's our hero in North Uganda refugee camp. Yes.
And that's also one of the reasons why we can reach so many places and so many people. It's to find the people who are the village leaders, find the people and support them for a long time and come back to them, and finds the ones that are doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, and that you often find out after a time very easily, you know, who is, because some will come because of other reasons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we jump a bit, I mean, a couple of years that, as you know, also in 2015-16, there was a huge influx of refugees in Europe from Afghanistan and especially from Syria during the beginning, or I mean, some of the earlier years of the war in Syria, but also from Iraq, Somalia, Eritrea, Afghanistan, or if I didn't mention that. And so then we were called by a colleague, again called to come to one of the islands where most refugees would come to, or one of the big refugee receiving islands called Lesbos in Greece, very close to the Turkish coast. You can find it close when you look there, but it's the sea easily gets very rough between the two countries. But then we were called to work with the volunteers, because they got very stressed working with refugees, because that's also one thing. When you start working with people who come with stories that you have never listened to before, that's also one thing that is very important to think of. It doesn't matter actually if you're a super skilled therapist but have no use of holding the story that somebody comes with that goes over your imagination, because that's what you will hear. And that's what happened to many of these volunteers, because in 2015, many of the volunteers were young women from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, UK, and Europe, living, very affluent lives, most of them, and then wanting to do something and coming to a reality that they couldn't even imagine that a person could have lived through, getting very stressed. And being stressed and not sleeping, and even getting angry because of high levels of stress, which made it not a very good situation. So what we were asked to do was to help them to, you have to cope with yourself first. You have to help yourself first before you can help others. You have to use these techniques for yourself first. You have to find, what is my reason to be here? Good, helping, but can I help? Can I, take the stories that people come with, or will I, be overwhelmed and even be so emotional that the other person even feels that he or she has to comfort you because they have survived coming far, far, far away from a war. Very dangerous crossing over land, over mountains, being, harassed, being, for many women, sexual abuse is so common. And then crossing the sea, that's one of these refugees said, they always told me, she had never seen the sea before. They always told me the sea is blue, but the sea was black and so frightening, and then coming here and then meeting stressed people, stressed white people who stand on the beach instead of somebody who says, because for them it was like heaven coming just on shore. And then you meet people who are screaming, give me the baby, I'll save you, like this. So that's the situation that was a bit, not with everybody, of course, but with too many of those.
And sometimes, in a time as short as 3 days, 72 hours, with lack of sleep, you can actually, some of them would get what they called NGO burnout, where 3 days can be enough if you're staying awake all the time tense, all the time trying to save everything and everybody that comes in without coming for the right reason. So sleep and self-care is is essential in these places. And also working in these places we came back later and worked with refugees. Then even if, you know, even if we have worked with this for a long time, I remember I made the very easy mistake of asking a person who came in who had been subjected to torture, and he wanted help, and I said I would help him. And for a short second, I said, you know, if you feel like closing your eyes, that's okay. And I hear Gunilla behind me going, no, it's not okay. Because the moment he closed his eyes, everything came back. So immediately we asked him to open his eyes again, and it was okay. But even for a second, forgetting that, even for a second, forgetting what kind of a theater they have in their mind can actually be, a pretty daunting
Reactivated.
experience.
Yeah, so this was, I mean, already then in 2015, we created another TLA, 3-letter abbreviation. I think that picture is coming after this. And that was this one, you know, T and a smile, considering that what you need is actually not somebody screaming at you when you come. You need somebody who's calm, you know, you need somebody who's there, who's grounded, who can receive you, who can say, you know, the worst is over. We are here together. I'm here with you, you know, using this kind of verbal first aid. And if you haven't read the book of Judith Simon Prager called The Worst is Over, please do, which is also about verbal first aid, what to say for people in crisis, you know. Don't say, oh no, or what has happened? Oh, so horrible. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it's easy to feel that you want to show that you understand, but you don't understand. You never understand when you haven't been in that situation, but you can be there and be a safe, you know, be an island of safety where people can come, have a tea and a smile, just offer something to drink or water if it's hot, you know. But in this case, it was November and cold, so it was tea. And just, oh, welcome, you know.
And just offer and hold a safe space for them where they can actually find a moment of peace. Because remember, these people are coming from a different situation than any other person. Like Gunilla says, it's really hard to imagine. They've been through violence as witnesses, as victims, as perpetrators, perhaps. They've seen war. They've had lack of food, water, and shelter. There's might be physical injuries, infections, diseases. They might have been subjected to forced labor or torture or sexual assault, which is common. They've experienced lack of medical care. And among all other things, they've experienced lack of respect for rights. So they haven't really felt safe.
Yeah. So this is where we just want to make a pause and have some questions. Yeah, Judith. So, Viv, do you call yourself Viv or how do you pronounce your name, Viv? Viv. Okay, I say Viv. And who the book The Worst is Over, who created what is called then verbal first aid. Right. And she is from California also, Judith Simon Prager, a fantastic person, and a very who has been working a lot with first responders and seeing how words can help to even stop bleeding, actually. I mean, but in that sense lower the stress in the body and make the parasympathetic, the rest and recuperation system reactivated. Yeah, and Judith Acosta, yeah, because there were two of them writing that book together. Beautiful.
So we'd love to hear now. I mean, we'll take a pause. We could talk any amount of time about our experiences, but we also want to find out what are the questions a little bit more specifically, like we asked you, David. What are the questions that you're looking for answers to? Are there specific things you're facing right now? Are there general questions? So please write them in the chat or even unmute yourself and ask them so that we know that we have time to address them.
Yeah, and I mean, please do. And while that, I can just, tell that these things that we have told now about has been away from our country. I mean, we both live in Sweden, and in 2015-16, Sweden received 250,000 refugees from many different countries. And I saw today that because yesterday was our a national day, and then those who have become citizens of Sweden, they get like a certificate. And I saw like now that since 2015, 160,000 actually Syrian refugees now have citizenship in Sweden. So we worked also here in Sweden when people came here to different localities, and then it's not called refugee camp, it's more like refugee center. It can be a school that is not being used, or a hotel. Many hotels at that time were turned into refugee centers. And they're also, again, looking for, I mean, the town where I live part of the time, it's called Strömstad, and outside there were some, summer resorts that were turned into refugee centers. And then there were a number of people, because in the beginning of the refugee crisis, it was called, so many people turned up, both in Greece, but also in Sweden and other countries, Germany, everywhere, to help, to assist. And in my town, there were group of people who supported and refugee welcome committees. And so we went to some of these refugee centers, and then there came the suggestion that we would do a TTT workshop in there. But then instead of just starting and saying, hello, come, let's have a workshop on TTT, what's that? That's strange. So we started by going to look for who is the like Ulf said before, the person who people turn to in the Afghan community, because there were Afghans, they were from Eritrea. Who is the one they talk to within the Eritrean group, who already is the one helping the others?
Yeah,
in the
community
Iraqi group,
leaders.
Community leaders within the refugee center, because they're probably, often it was somebody who spoke English because they could communicate with the Swedish guys who came there. And then, of course, there were others who spoke their languages. But my town is very small, so there were not many who spoke Arabic, or Tigrinya, or Dari, or Farsi. I mean, so there had to be somebody. So there was somebody within all the different communities. And then starting talking to that person, telling, oh, this is what we do. It's about stress and trauma. What do you think, would you like to try? And then when that person felt that same, like Pastor John in Bidi Bidi, some kind of change, then we asked him or her to evaluate, do you think this would be good to do here? And then they would go and talk to the members of the Afghan community, for example, and see how we could do. So we always start with somebody else, even though this time it was not really an invitation, but in some way it was, because some of that support committee in the town, they already knew some of the persons who then would talk to others. So for us, this is a very important, so that's also about ownership. So it's not us coming and say, oh, you have so many problems, let us do this and you will be fine. No. Saying that, yeah, as always, we all have these problems of stress and trauma. We have learned something. That's how we present it. That have helped me, has helped thousands of people all over the world. Would you like to try?
And also, Kristin Miller, I mean, you experienced this in a different way, didn't you, when you were working with the California fires? Because that was the same thing. I remember in the beginning that you couldn't just show up and jump in and put up a flag saying, I can help you. You had to get to know the community, get to know the people there, actually basically a little bit even before stuff
Kristin,
happens.
please
Would you like to talk a bit?
I can talk a bit. Yeah, it's been quite a education by wildfire. I have to say. But you know what afforded me to be able to be in the Red Cross shelters, which I'm now actually trained to be there. But when I wasn't trained, was the people that I knew, and the people that I know in my community who I already have relationships. They knew that I know how to deal with trauma, and we had this set of skills. And we went in, and they trusted me to be able to help them to learn the skills. yeah, and I do think I just want to go back to one thing that was the most important thing. It's how you come in. Do you know what I mean? Like if you come in as the professional expert who knows all the answers and knows exactly what this is like and what it's like to lose your home and to be away from your home for, you know, well, you'll never go back to many of the homes that burnt down in our community. Do you know what I mean? And you're riled up and you're triggered yourself. And I mean, I did. I went to a Red Cross thing after my house almost burnt down the day after. And I was riled up. But I also know a lot of techniques and I calm myself down. And it is that energy of openness, safety, emotional first aid, being willing to sit with people, to give them a bottle of water, to breathe down, to calm the energy down. And then there's an opportunity sometimes to offer tapping or I wasn't Havening trained at that point. I am now, but there was an opportunity to do a technique with them. And I saw it happen, but it is that relationship, even though it's somebody in for emotional first aid. And really, it is about how you frame it. Yes.
So
this
much.
is terrible. And we're going to get through this. You know,
Yeah.
we're going to get through this and we're going to find a way back. And so, yeah, it's been fascinating. It's been fascinating. I've learned a lot about emotional first aid as opposed to being on the whole other end of the spectrum as a long-term trauma therapist. Also knowing people in the community, because my hope for everybody is that every community and all of our mental health and prison systems and service systems knows how to have basic regulation skills, knows how to respond. And so that's helped me to get into the schools and the other organizations on the other end. And so I'm really proud of us, and I'm so grateful to you, Ulf and Gunilla, because you have truly been my mentor and truly held my hand, because I did not know what I was doing.
Yeah, but we love you, Kristin, and we also are citing and quoting Kristin in our book, where we have a chapter called TTT in Disaster Relief. And I also like that one of the points that you wrote there, you help to pry us out of the individual therapist model that had hindered our efforts, and it is not effective in crisis or in training lay people, which is this, that that's also part of what we do. And we encourage people, it's to work with groups of people, because to really keep it, especially in crisis, to first aid. And then if you have a group, and then the second thing that even if we talk about verbal first aid, that the technique that we teach, you don't need to speak, you don't need to use words. So it can be, as Kristin also showed, the model of engagement that can be transmitted to anyone under any circumstances non-verbally. We really appreciate that feedback that you gave us. And then the courage to engage with hope, because we also work, I mean, we have specialized in trauma, but we also have specialized in joy, music. Ulf is a professional musician, so we bring in music, joy, balloons, making things surprise, how can you do like this when you work with trauma? How is that possible? For some, it's really weird. But then when they start, you see that, it lightens up, dancing, moving, and then always learning from where we are, always asking, how do you cope with stress and trauma? Starting in that end, how do you cope with stress and trauma? And then just add this little TTT, this havening, to what you already do. And then you'll see that there will be probably, never, of course, what you say, promising anything, probably.
I'd like to add to that Viv is saying, in the dream, Viv is describing in the chat, and please do read that, how imagery can be used to create metaphors that are, and then you add the tapping or the havening or whatever intervention you're doing that calms down the limbic system. On top of that, you're actually resolving it in two sides of the brain body system, which is wonderful. And we use the music not only as a way of adding something that actually also works on the limbic system, but as a way of teaching or training or creating ritual in a group and community, which in itself creates a safe space. If we're all singing the same song, it's kind of more peaceful than if we're not, to put it that way. Thanks, Kristin. Yeah, we love everything you do.
Thank you.
I do have to tell you a funny story.
Okay.
Which is really it's interesting. So in 2018, when my town burnt down, and the whole side of West Side, I was doing recovery groups after I did the initial outreach, and so I was pretty tired. Do you know? I'm pretty tired, and there's been a lot of outreach, and many of my own personal clients' houses burnt down, and so I'm in the group, and fortunately, what saving grace is that we're regulating with them, but we're talking through, and we're doing pretty large group recovery work with TTT, and my system starts to regulate down, and I start to yawn, and my eyes weep, and it's like, and one person looked up and laughed and said, "You're ready to fall out of the chair." You know? And it was a really wonderful moment, because we could identify that trauma impacts us too. It's probably not the best way to go into a group, but it happened.
Yeah.
And then you use it as a teaching moment, and we were able to laugh, because that is the state of most of our firefighters in Northern California at this point. They're already deployed in New Mexico.
Oh.
And so it's just funny breaking it up,
Yeah.
laughing. Sometimes you can use
Exactly.
your own adrenal response as an education device.
Definitely. And that's really, I completely agree. That's how we do, we're together. And that's why we use this word from Kenya, Rwanda, Turikumwe. We are here together, It's not that I'm separate just because I come from this country. Of course, we have different experiences, but we are here because of you. We are here because of each other. Thank you so much, Kristin.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat. I tried to answer shortly, but it doesn't have a short answer. It really has a long answer. So just in short, in a city like DC, the refugee service organizations provide support for refugees from many different countries. Is it more efficient to work with groups from the same country who share in the same experience? In other words, is the shared experience of a specific trauma important to the efficacy of the group healing process? Are there things we must be aware of for different populations? And our answer. Our answer is what I ended with, concluding it depends. It's a great question. My experience is that even a shared experience is individual at all times. Everything is subjective. And if you frame the content of a group session, generally, you can work in the individual responses. We do this sometimes with something we call a somatic poem, which is just a single setup phrase that can be easily translated as maybe the only translated part of an intervention in a group. And it's in our book. And just shortly, it is that people stand up and say, and you do this as a group to create a community feeling together. So people go, this rain, they're answering call and response. This rain of things that have happened to me through my sight, through my nose, through my taste, through my hearing, through my skin, rinses through my body, through my heart, through my stomach, all the way down to the ground. And then people take a step forward, leaving that behind them as on a timeline. And then you start doing a tapping or other intervention. That's a way of generally doing something if you want to do it that way. I think it's hard to be too smart in these things because you have no idea what each thing means to the individual. Would you say something else to that, Gunilla?
Of course, it depends, because sometimes to have people from different communities is very good, because then you feel that, it's not us only that has been exposed to these kind of things. You can have exchange of, really? It's like when I have sometimes been talking about violence within the relationship that happens a lot, and especially after the pandemic, it has been so much. For example, when I was in Rwanda, and Placid knows, and we have been talking about this. But then when I refer to it, that I've been working with these women's shelters in Sweden, some people get, what? That happens also in your, rich country. We thought it was only here that these kind of things happened. And then it becomes more, a discussion, a discussion and the exchange, rather than, oh, we have problems that doesn't exist anywhere else. But then, of course, depending on language, I have been working with groups in Sweden that were like 5 different languages, and then you need really to have, and then we come to another point, which is a word that we don't call translator, because a person cannot translate, when you are working with this. It has to be somebody who interprets, and within the Doctors Without Borders, none of these words are allowed, but it's cultural mediator, because you need somebody who will, and when you're working with the language that you don't know at all, with somebody who understands, what it is you're transmitting. So Barso, who is here from Kabul, his brother was working with us with Kitrinos Healthcare, the organization we worked with refugees in Lesbos, and Atta, who now lives in France. He was one of the cultural, he probably is in this picture, cultural mediators, because with him you have to ask him, so what do you think, how will we do with this? You had, to discuss with a person who came, and perhaps, so this is from Kitrinos Healthcare but I don't, not, unfortunately, he's not in this picture. But we had so many, and they were all refugees, the ones that we worked with in Lesbos, when we worked with this organization of medical professionals who came as volunteers to help the refugees. So there was somebody who volunteered. They got some kind of compensation, but it was not that they were employed, but they were themselves refugees. So through them, again, we could ask, so what do you think, this person, can we do like this or this, or can you explain this? And then they would put it in the words that would be acceptable for this person. Because being Swedish, or even worse, some Dutch, we are very sharp in questions, we go straight forward, asking this and that and that and that. And people get completely intimidated when you ask these straightforward questions. That was the first thing I learned in Rwanda. Don't ask so many questions. And for me, I'm a journalist. That's my profession from the beginning. I love asking questions, but I had to hold my mouth, and really, as our manifesto starts with, take off your shoes and listen first. Listen, listen, listen. Don't speak so much, and don't come, like Christine said, don't come with all your things. Listen first. That's super important. Listen.
Another thing about that is also that when we tried to start making these studies and tried to use forms that were created in a Western setting, we found that to try to interpret or translate or in some way convey the questions of the form in a way that's understandable, it's not easy. It's basically just not easy. So it's not easy to make a good symptom diminishing study, because even the symptoms are described in different ways in different cultural settings.
So you can show the picture of Siana first, before the panic, if you just go to Siana. So that's the camp of Moria. And here's Dr. Siana, who became our entry to Kitrinos Healthcare. So we met her in 2015. This is a picture from 2015 when we were there to help volunteers. She had set up this big tent. She's a GP, general practitioner from London. And she had come as a volunteer. And then she set up the organization Kitrinos Healthcare that also Barso in Kabul works for, and that we are or have been connected to. So then in 2018, she called us and said that, oh, please, can you come and assist us with this, with the refugees? Because so many of them come and they think that they have heart problems, they have lung problems, they have, so much palpitation, but we realize that they are traumatized. It's not that they have physical, disease. We really need your help with stress and trauma. So then we came, and then you can just go to the next picture, which is then how the camp looks from outside, and then to the panic one. And then we set up a special part for TTT and havening for refugees. It was still intent as it was, but still a part of the refugee camp. And many came with panic attacks to the camp. And the only thing the medical doctors was to give an injection of diazepam, I think it's called diazepam in English, a tranquilizing injection. And then the person could come back 3 days later because the panic was not gone. So we started to use specifically in this case, havening, not tapping, havening, which is just stroking from the shoulders down to the elbows. And if you haven't, learned havening, you can go for training with us or with Ulf. He has specific trainings with havening techniques. You do it over the shoulders or the hands together or in the face. So this is something very calming for your nervous system, for your amygdala. So this became something very specific because before they had so much problems with these people coming with panic, because of the experience and because of the huge frustration of being in a refugee camp, thinking that I've come to Europe, but you're actually trapped in a horrible refugee camp. And the paperwork is going slow. They say, no, this and not, they don't believe your story. Things happen all the time. The food line starts having fights because there's not food enough, even if you're in the home of democracy in Greece, but it isn't democracy. So then using this havening, and then not only for some few minutes, but for a long time, very efficient. So that has became something that when we came, we said, wow, oh, so good. The doctors were so happy because we could help them. And in these cases, super important, like with the brother of Barso, with Atta, and the others who were cultural interpreters, who could at the same time, but because then you can need to use some distraction, and finding out, so who is this person, or what does she or he like, so you start bringing their mind to something else than to what has brought them into panic. Football, flowers, food, you cooking.
And if somebody like a child or somebody like doesn't feel comfortable by being touched by you, there's usually a family member there who you can show them how to apply that touch to them, and they can continue doing that later. So, a parent or somebody else can easily do that and continue until calm. So it's a way of bringing families together as well.
Yeah, and then you could see, so we were talking about that the other day, Ulf and myself, because when we were both in the refugee camp, there was one guy who had been there the day before. He was from Iraq, and he had come many times. He was just sitting. They came carrying him in a blanket, four guys or two guys, perhaps it was enough because he wasn't too big. One, corner of the blanket each, carrying him to the clinic, completely in panic, in another world. And then, he was put down. He was just shaking. And he had come several times before. They had given him some tranquilizer. He came back again and again, the third time. So then I happened to be there. And so I said, bring him to me. And then together with the cultural interpreter, cultural mediator, we explained that, we'll just do this. Is that okay with you? Yeah. And then we added this and, and I started then talking, so where are you from? Yeah. And finding out that he was actually a nurse from his home city, but hadn't been working because he had got from the war. He got so much flashbacks. We continued. And then finally he was calm. He sat and we started talking about other things. And then the next day, Ulf came to the island. And then we went through the capital of Lesbos, which is called Mytilene. And then I saw this guy sitting in the park. So we approached him and said, how, you remember we met in the clinic? Yes, yeah, he said, and I actually have a brother in Sweden. He started just, also you slept well. Yeah, no problem. He was out, and started to go forward, talking about this post-traumatic growth. He was already going ahead, not stuck in the past. He could release that through these techniques, and that's the magic. That's really the magic of these techniques.
There was a question as well from Dorothy here. Dorothy from Kenya. I missed it. I'm sorry. My concern is if this woman who has gone through a stillbirth, and as we all know, losing a kid is not easy. how can they be helped? Also, the street children, can they be in the process because they go through a lot? And the answer is definitely yes. Kim Sung, who is a havening practitioner, she's been working especially with women with birth traumas, similar to that. And we have had our colleague Germando in working at the center of BVS in Congo, working with a lot of kids that some of them are street kids, and some of them are liberated child soldiers or sex slaves, and they have been using these techniques. And that's where one of our studies found that the results were good and promising. And also, if we talked to the people there taking care of psychosocial support, they would say that after having done these techniques for a while, aggression levels would be lower and the kids would be sleeping through the night and they wouldn't be falling out of their bed. So I hope that addresses it for you, Dorothy. Any other question right now? Because we're already at 7:12 and we have some more stuff to tell you.
I have a question. Is it okay to
Yes.
ask? I'm just wondering how you dealt with communities that were quite sex segregated. So, you know, where men don't mix with women and women don't mix with men, or whether that didn't come up in the work at all.
Oh, yes, it did. I mean, we can mention did we have any, you showed the picture from Gaziantep.
No, not yet. That's the next one coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, so that comes directly to the slide, because we were through this organization of ACEP, Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology. There was one person within the board who initiated for us to go to Turkey, to Gaziantep, to work with this psychiatrist, Dr. Abu Hilal. This was in 2017. Who himself a refugee from Syria and working with the children, traumatized children in Turkey, but also other, he had a lot of other colleagues within his Syria Bright Future, his organization. And so we came to Gaziantep, and I mean, within there we did, I don't know, perhaps if I'm misunderstanding your question, but there we did I did the workshop of the techniques with the women and Ulf with the men. Because that was their wish. And of course, because then they could also those who had hijab could take it off because they were only with me. And then it was easier to do these techniques. So that, and in other communities too, I mean, depending on what are the wish of this community, you know, what makes this possible to make this workshop successful, they will be the one to decide. So when they ask us, we say, no, you decide, you are the expert. We just come as facilitators, having these tools and to show you, but the rest, you know.
And there's sometimes like in Moria and Lesbos, when there would be a woman that came in and there would be this aspect of touch, then you instruct the husband or the child to apply it, or you apply it on yourself and they can follow. You just ask.
But you were thinking of something specific, I'm sure, Jimmy. No?
Is that an answer to your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, so that can be, I mean, we have also, I've been with colleagues, I mean, it's a pastor and imam from Nigeria who works in conflict resolution and reconciliation. And with them, a lot of that has been with different communities who have been in conflict and then working with one each, and they have a set of questions and work that they do before they come together, you know, and then the aim is to find a way forward for them together, and then resolving trauma is a very important component, because so much conflicts in the world depends on personal traumas that then are transmitted to family, to community, and then you have this, you know, and then you have these stories about revenge that starts having, you know, becoming more and more vivid for the community. And then you have to work like where in the area where Christian and Placide were this weekend, which is called Eldoret and Burnt Village, Burnt Forest in the west of Kenya. After the elections of 2007, there were these huge clashes between different communities. And that's where we went also for some of this reconciliation. So it all depends on what's the purpose.
And that's also one of the reasons that our our tagline for the Peaceful Art Network is actually to ease suffering and prevent violence, because we believe that if you ease suffering, you do prevent violence. Or as Homeboy Industries in LA have a saying, we worked a little bit with them, and they have a saying that hurt people hurt people. That's not always true, but it is true to a certain extent.
Mhm.
So what?
A
Yes?
question for you, that, or if there's time, of all the stories I heard, one of the ones that I thought was the most challenging was the boy in the refugee camp in Moria. Just the choices you had to make to pull that off, I thought just were really instructive. So if you have time, that I think that might be a good story to share.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the story is also part of our book, because it is it was in the same refugee camp. So there was this boy who was so out acting. This could say that utagerande.
Acting out.
Acting out, and they came to have some help. They had been to different places to get some help, and the parents were really very felt very helpless in this situation. And the boy had seen many things before they left their country. They were Kurds from Iraq, from the north of Iraq, and so then the Doctors Without Borders, they asked us to come and see if we could help this boy. So then we did first some other stuff, some acrobacy and some drawing with this boy, just to make, and then and the interpreter or the cultural mediator also participated. But the boy, I mean, was really acting out, taking things and throwing them, and on other people. So they had a very hard time. But then I said that no, just like Ulf said, that it wasn't possible. I mean, I wouldn't go and try to do something with this boy. It was much better that the parents did it, because they, especially the father, had very good contact with this boy. So we showed him what he could do, both the havening and the tapping. And he said that, yeah, I will try, And then some days later, he came back, and we did this together, And we continued, and this boy was screaming, had been screaming since 5 o'clock that same morning. And perhaps we met at 11, and we started to apply this, or the father did it, I said, just continue. And perhaps half an hour or 40 minutes, I don't remember how long time. And finally, how this boy, lays down on the floor of this clinic, sleeping, But then it was this, that, giving it over to the father, and not thinking again, like Kristin say, that I'm the one that are going to do it. No, you have to find your way to, and be sensitive to who is. I'm not a savior. I'm not a fixer. Just having techniques that you can transfer to one person or the other. And the father then later, said that, yeah, I've been using this as much as I could. And then they got actually another apartment also, because the problems, were resolved before they didn't allow them to stay in an apartment, because there was too much trouble with this boy. So this was, the power of these simple techniques is, can never be over exaggerated, actually.
Great, thank you.
Is that an answer? And David, we're getting close to the time where we said we might not, but still, did you get some kind of answer to the 4 tiers?
Yes, I think you gave a really concise, excellent answer to the way that what I was most interested in was the second tier, and you do address that and address that in your app, and so that was really helpful.
Yeah.
Reducing limbic arousal to trauma-based triggers. And so, yeah, the app, I mean, you can all download the app if you want. We haven't even updated the slide, but it says, stress and trauma relief in 5 minutes, free app in 27. It's actually 33 or 34 now. Languages.
And Ukrainian is included then, and Romanian. And later on also Lingala and Maori from New Zealand, and classical Chinese. That was the latest languages added to the app. So it's getting, I think we could go into the Guinness Book of Records. You know, for
Most languages in a trauma app.
in a trauma.
That's a weird
Definitely most
record.
languages in a trauma app, we're sure.
Well, the impact that the two of you have had is just amazing. I'm just totally blown away by it.
Thank you. I mean, we're blown away by you, so that's
Yeah,
good. So
so
we can have
it's
our
mutual.
blown away club. Yeah, but that's good. We have to inspire each other. And I mean, that's really what I feel. We are inspired by all of you who come in, Lorna and Christine and Marie. I mean, we want to
Every
mention
single
Marie.
one.
Is Marie there still?
Placid.
And Placid, of course. Marie is there, our dear friend from Sweden, who is a singer and work with singing bowls, I think you call it in English, and toning, which we also have added to our, she started adding it to tapping, to just breathe in and then let the tone when you breathe out. And because that's also all these vibrations that the humming, singing gives to your vagus nerve, to your nervous system, is so healing. And she has really taught us so much about that. So, she's also in our book. I mean, there's also part of a chapter about her work and how we have been collaborating so much. She's a fantastic healer, and these things, that's how we take in what there is possible to do. And then we did the Havening song together. We can send you or should we end by showing it? Actually, we have some minutes more. Can't you show it later? Since Marie is here, I'm here, Placid is here, so we are all here, and
Yeah, we're all in it.
At least in the background of Marie's house, her husband, who is the guitar player in that song. So it's about havening, and we got inspired because Pastor John.
Let me show you a 60-second immunity boost.
Yeah. Immunity boost. Yeah. Who was that saying it? I didn't see.
No, it's okay. It'll come.
Yeah. It was you. I mean, sorry. I thought it came from YouTube. I thought it was one of the participants who said something. Okay, so let's look at the Havening song. We hope that the sound is a bit low and a bit, but you just, what do you say? Bear with it, I think you say in English, is it?
Yeah, just sharpen your ears.
Sharpen your ears, yes.
Yeah, and let's look at it. And meanwhile, if anybody of you finds that you have more questions that you'd like to ask or anything, just post them in the chat so that we can see them. Let's have a look right now. Sometimes my mind starts racing to the things of the past, and then emotions are triggered and they trigger real fast. I put my hands on my shoulders and I pull them down, and if I do it for a while, it will reset the alarm. Self-haven, self-haven, I brush my troubles away. Self-haven, self-haven, it makes me feel okay. I self-haven, self-haven, I brush my troubles away. Self-haven, self-haven, because it makes me feel okay. So if you have a bad dream and you wake up at night, your heart starts a beating, but there's no one to fight. You put your hands on your shoulders and you pull them down, and if you do it for a while, it will reset the alarm. Your self-haven, self-haven, you brush your troubles away. Self-haven, self-haven, because it makes you feel okay. Your self-haven, self-haven, I brush your troubles away. Self-haven, self-haven, because it makes you feel okay.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you again, Marie, and Lasse, of course. You have to greet
Great
him.
project.
Great project. And Placid was there also when we recorded that when he was in Sweden. And then it's me and my team of 10 dogs so who also participated. So that's great. Yes, Placid.
Yeah. Yesterday, when I was learning to the prison where we had the workshop, I was getting the motorbikes. Then I saw a very young lady. She was talking to herself. She's 18. And then I asked, "Can I have your number, please?" She didn't know me, but I just felt it. My intuition like pushed me to talk to her. So I went, I did the training. After the training, I called her. "Hi, it's the guy you met on the street." So I asked, "Where are you? I want to talk to you." So she made the appointment. She came to one of the close of the restaurant, and then I found her. She has very strong hiccups, like something like that. And then I asked, what is your problem? You look sick. And she told me that she has a heart palpitation. Then you could even feel when I was sitting beside her. And then she has a stomachache for 5 years. She lives in the refugee camp, one of the refugee camp here. Her parents are refugees. She was born here. And then she had this heart palpitation for 5 years too. And then I said, I think, I started also telling my story that I also was born in DRC. She's also her parents are refugees from Congo. So, and then I showed, so if you like, we started by the breathing. Just within 30 seconds, the heart stopped pumping a lot. It becomes to the normal. And then the stomachache stopped and she started crying. And then I asked, "Well, why are you crying?" He said, I left the school 1 week ago, but now I feel like I want to go back to study.
Wow. So you did some tapping or only breathing?
Yeah, we did some tapping. And then today in the morning, she called me, Placid, I'm going back to school. And before she was telling me, I don't want to go back to school.
Wonderful.
So I from out of that, I made this statement: make yourself available to serve. You never know whom you meet.
Yeah, and that's so true. And Placid, he is an expert in this. I mean, he sees from 10 kilometers distance that there's somebody who needs tapping, and he's constantly doing workshops. And as he said, we are now having a big project in 2 of the prisons in Rwanda, also there to assist with. And we have been working in the prison since 2014 in Rwanda. With very fantastic results and these beautiful testimonies and songs and dances, and my goodness, last time when I was in Rwanda in February this year, we were going to one of the prisons, talking about being in tears. I just thought, wow, is this possible really? And poem, this 7-minute long poem about TTT, and when it translated, it's like a whole instruction, it is like. And after 2 workshops that Placid held with them, and before we came. Yeah, thank you so much, Placid. Always great.
Yeah, one of the doctor, he has been in the prison for 16 years. Yesterday I was talking to him. He's a medical doctor, and also he specialized in operation.
Surgery.
Yeah, surgery. So he told me that he has been having a difficult, comment on appelle constipation in English? How do
constipation, same.
Yeah, constipation for 2 years since he started practicing the tapping. Now he's doing. So I asked him also to write more things about.
Very good.
How life has been with this tapping.
Yeah, because these are these things that easily, directly are affected: the heart, the breathing, the stomach, the digestion, all these things. So you have, with your stories, you have mentioned several things that are the most common symptoms, as we know from this. Yeah, now it's 7:30. We thank you so much.
But we're a wonderful crowd who are collected here, and we usually don't have this. So if anybody has specific questions or anything you want to bring up or talk about, please feel free to do so now, because our intention is for you to find calm and pass it on. any way you can. And
Yeah.
you can even
And the book I would recommend is the first book on tap or on energy psychology I read was David Feinstein's book. The first one was called The Promise of Energy Psychology.
Yep.
Was it? I don't know which year you wrote, but that was my first. And then in that book, I had one part of the chapter that for me was also a message to me saying that, how is it? Something like, if we can resolve trauma, many of the conflicts in the world could be resolved. Something like that. I remember it's on the left page and in the later part of the book. But I copied it the first time I read it. This person, he understands the things that I'm dealing with. So yeah. So I will never.
Christian has a question, and Michael Goddard has a question as well. So we start with Christian. You raise your hand, please.
Are you there, Christian?
Yes, my name is Christian. I'm from Kenya. I work with refugees, but especially this year, Kenya has like a lot. Like if I can paraphrase, there is an election. Recently, when I was with Placida, we were talking about that because we passed through more than 5 counties, so we saw a lot concerning the election. We link it with the stress and trauma later, and there is another concern that there is some the 2 camps that we have, the biggest in East Africa. The government have said that like they were to be closed this year. Because of some issues around, like I didn't go deep. So the stress of the refugees are very high. So we have a lot to do with them because they don't know where like what to do. Though we are expecting that the government maybe will do something concerning that, because 43% or 80%, like 43% in one camp, another 40% in another camp, like they be closed. And there is a lot of refugees from different countries. So I remember when we met the Southern Sudan refugees, there is one lady that told me that during election, especially in Eldoret, like they attack them because they are not the voters, and like they use some words, the bad words. So when I talked about how she can just deal with her stress, we taught them like about the tapping. She was very happy. She said like she wished she could use the TTT to help the fellow refugees, because they live in one area. So she was so scared. So my question is this year, if we can, like there can be more plans concerning the refugees in Kenya and that very part of Eldoret, because they need the tapping, they need the solution concerning their stress. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very good, Christian. I mean, that you went to Placid, that area. And definitely, I know that because Ken has been talking about closing Dadaab specifically, which is the big refugee camp of Somali refugees. I think that was mainly, and so, yes, I'm sure we will continue in Kenya, especially if you can be there and do some documentation. That would be perfect.
Oh,
both
excellent.
there and on the other end, close to the Somali border, where Dadaab is.
Turkana.
Yeah, and also Turkana.
And Michael Goddard has a question as well. Maybe you can answer that.
Thank
one,
you,
Daniela.
Christian. Yeah.
Thanks,
What was
Christian.
the
The question is, does Peaceful Heart Network have connections with the authorities handling refugees in Europe? Is there a list of agencies to contact?
Oh, so where are you? Where are you placed, Michael? You are in what part of the world? If you write it, so where are you from yourself? because I mean, authorities in Europe, I mean, in Greece, there was this common European called Frontex, which are like more guarding the coast between Turkey and Greece. Apart from that, I mean, it's the UNHCR, which is the UN body of refugees, of course, in Europe also being active. But apart from that, each country will have their own authority. Like in Sweden, in Poland is handled locally, yeah. So that can be, Aga says, in Poland is handled locally. She's there now and working with Ukrainian refugees and the first responders in Poland who help the refugees. So it's all different from country to country. So again, it depends on where you are and what kind of authority you're looking for. In Sweden, some parts is dealt with locally, but then we have the government authority of migration that has the overall policy, but then the different municipalities have decisions to take themselves. So some of the communities, they refuse to take refugees and others receive plenty. So it all depends. Yeah, so yeah, Aga, can you please tell a bit about how it is for those of you who can stay a little bit? So Aga left and went from UK, and she's originally from Poland. She went to go to work in her home town to assist those who assist refugees. So do you want to say something, Aga?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you so much. And I am a bit late, so apologies for this. So yes, the work really had first two main aspects to cover, and we were building the model to actually go there and work with Ukrainian refugees directly. And my hometown is a small town up north in Poland, very small population, and they took on a lot of Ukrainian refugees, as you can imagine, lots of children. So the whole community of Ukrainian orphanages were transferred. So we have 3 at the moment, centers. They're very close. They seem to appear to be happy with the settings. They're not very open. They are not very open to any psychological support. And this is what we're handling at the moment. And it's exactly what you were saying, is how do we do that in the most compassionate and respectful way to actually not go there with, we've got the solution for you guys here. So at the moment, I'm working with the with whoever is volunteering in orphanages and the carers, and we're starting at that stage, because what I'm learning at the moment a lot is that the first need is secured, which is we have somewhere to sleep, we have somewhere to eat, something to eat, and we're feeling safe physically. Therefore, we're not sure if we need anything else at the moment, and emotional support, psychological support is not a high priority, and we are trying to support those supporters to actually change that and open them up. But a lot of work at the moment was refocused on the other aspect, which is helping first aid worker. But at turnout, I'm actually training everyone in the town. So the teachers from the kindergarten to up to grade 8, we're working with the social care workers, anyone and everyone who within the system is supporting somehow any Ukrainian refugees. So I've, within the last 4 weeks, I've managed to train almost 350 people, and I'm doing it every day, workshops. And I do teach safe havening, tapping, a little bit of breath work, an absolute need. Everyone knows, and everyone is really appreciative. So we're collecting basic feedback on the session, on the workshops.
Wonderful.
With SATs and things. And yeah, hopefully that will make changes. We've got a lot of people saying that they will use tapping. They want to learn more. They want to learn techniques, and they want to take into the communities.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Thank
That's
you,
fantastic. And I like to, just 2 reflections on that. In one part, when people are traumatized, there can be an unwillingness to change, because any change might imply some kind of danger. So if you have the basic needs and you feel everything is okay, then don't rock the boat. That is an aspect that might be there. When people discuss common barriers for refugees in getting help, some of them that are listed, one was listed on UNICEF's site, was desire to receive care, which also could be tied to the feeling of safeness, lack of an anonymity, not being sure that if you do get care that you can stay anonymous, that there actually is a shortage of mental health workforce professionals, but you're really catering to that, making everybody in the village a potential helper. And then there's the lack of culturally competent care, which shouldn't be a problem there because you have the shared language, affordability, you're offering it to everybody, and then resources to learn more. And there you actually do have some. So you're catering to a lot of that if you can just reach the people that find the change and experience it so that they can actually ask you to come back and show more. I think that's what we said in the beginning before you came. Actually experiencing it for the people who are the village helpers is probably the easiest road in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's so good.
Well done.
I actually have to leave now. I'm sure we have many questions. Perhaps we can have another session later on with this, because it's a very interesting and unfortunately urgent task for all of us to assist people who are in need of these tools, and it is a gift that we have, and to share that is for me has been the biggest thing in my life and has changed everything for forever. So thank you so much.
Just to round it off, then, those of you who are signing out now, if you could just write in the chat if there's anything specific you took away that you think is useful, or any question that pops into your mind that you'd like us to address in the future. We're going to take the recording, we'll share it with you all and send it to you all who have signed up, and probably share it on our in our resources, open source, because that's what we do. So please write in the chat if there's anything specific you took with you or would like us to explore more. We'll send you the download for the app. We'll send you our book as a PDF. We'll send you David's study. That's all right, David, isn't it? It's out there. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And hope to see you. And don't hesitate to contact us if you have some questions. We're always open for discussion and to learn more.
One good question is how to not re-traumatize people. Well, in part, that's why we don't use spoken intervention, because as soon as you start speaking, you're kind of opening a risk to re-traumatization more than if you don't.
And our shortest instruction for TTT is connect, or think of even, to whatever bothers you, but ever so lightly. Ever so lightly, or ever so slightly, which is correct English. Ever so lightly, let me say ever so lightly. Just keep it very, very, and that also comes from Dr. Johnson. Take it very slow. You only need to touch it to be able to use these techniques. Good. Thank you, and see you soon.
Excellent. Keep them coming. We'll add them to the list. We'll answer further on. Yeah, what would it be like to normalize emotional regulation? That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so good.
And like you're saying, Michael, when they close their eyes, that's why we say close your eyes if comfortable. If not, keep them open.
It's optional.
It's up to the person. It's optional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they should keep their eyes open.
Yeah. Thank you, Mitsuko. I saw that you came. But...
I have another question. I don't think you're going to have, I don't know if you would have encountered it or not, but when I'm working with people from Muslim communities and they're LGBT, part of the issue is when they're relocated into asylum centers with other people from their community, the communities are so homophobic or transphobic that actually seeking help from members of those communities is counterintuitive, and it kind of requires people from outside of the community who have got more tolerant views towards homosexuality and transphobia, trans community. I'm wondering if that came up at all for you or not.
I mean, I have colleagues in the north. I mean, I have not worked in that community myself, so I have my own experience, but have colleagues from another country who had to flee to a third country because of this homophobic atmosphere, law, everything in his home country. So I'm sure with him, if you would like to discuss with somebody, I mean, he now lives in Egypt, you know, where it's not an easy country either to be at all. But if you like, I can connect you to him. He is known in this, I mean, I met him many years ago and have been in contact. He got some help from some humanitarian organization to flee because he started an organization in his country to work with these questions, but he couldn't stay, you know, it was impossible. So, just write me an email and I will connect you to Sharif. He's a beautiful person.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so our
also
email
have
is there
a friend.
in the chat.
He teaches mindfulness, and also he knows the tapping, and he's from that group.
Community. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Write us an email and we will share it with Placid and Sharif. Great. Thank you.
All right. I
Yeah,
think we
might
gotta
jump
go
on
now.
your Havening training anyway, so we can discuss it if I see you there. Take care. Goodbye.
Excellent. All right, people.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Much love.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, Placid.
Take care, Sansom.